Okay, so now I'm going to review some of our penmanship in case your kiddo needs a review before we take our test. I do have some music playing in the background, so if this ends up being too distracting for you, let me know and I'll make sure in the next penmanship review I'll just turn it off. But there were three things that I wanted to cover before your kiddo takes that penmanship test if they feel they need it. First of all, I wanted to talk about the two different parts of this capital F. So I guess that's two parts out of the three that I want to talk about. And when I taught the capital F cursive for my kiddos, I told them how I was actually taught, and in my head it made more sense. And then I showed them how the curriculum teaches it, just so they understand that there's a couple different ways that you can do cursive handwriting, but there's rules they have to follow in order for them to be identifiable. So we're going to quickly talk about how I learned how to do the capital F. And I start the ceiling. Let's see if you guys can see that. There we go. Start the ceiling. You're going to loop. Ceiling again. Down to the floor. Then go about halfway up where that dotted midline is. Give it a jaw. And then you cross at a dotted midline. Obviously mine's a lot wider than it should be, but I just wanted to show you. And then the curriculum teaches it this way, and the T also starts the same way too. So, ceiling, and then you loop, stop. You're going to take your pencil, and you're going to tie a string on it and pull it down to the floor, and this time, you're going to cross this way. And so, and it does not connect to the next letter, but the one thing that I wanted to point out to them was that whichever way they choose, which they can choose either way is fine, it's very important that they cross at that dot, that halfway where that dotted midline would be. That distinguishes the difference between a T and an F. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was the word of. So when we have a lowercase o, and a lowercase f. I'll talk a little briefly about what I taught them. For the lowercase o, there's two different ways. One way that I learned and one way the curriculum teaches. When you do your O, start about just below that midpoint. Go around, close the bag, and Tarzan swing it. Okay, I always call that a Tarzan swing. I don't think that's what other people use. That's just something I came up with because the kids love it. But this is what the curriculum teaches, and this is how I was taught. So it starts out the same way, floor, and then you're going to close the bag, and then you're going to give it that loop, and then Tarzan swing. Then it joins to the next letter. And I told them either way is fine. They can use whichever way. It's just very important that they join it at the top. If they go down to the floor, it looks like an A, not an O. So it's very important that it's okay that they learn the different ways to teach it. They just need to know the rules so they're identifiable. And then we've talked about the lowercase f. If you remember, if you caught one of my other videos, I said the lowercase f is one of the toughest things for them to remember. And the reason is when they go up, down, and forward, okay, it looks easy, but some of the kids get it mixed up right about here. And I'm going to show you what I mean. When they do that lowercase f, they go to the ceiling, down, and instead of going forward, they go backwards. And it looks almost like a capital L falling off the line, or a lowercase j that went a little bit out of control. So that's something that I've been working on having them practice. And one way that I've taught them to help them remember is this lowercase f. The bumps are in the same direction as a capital B. Still learning how to write and video at the same time, so I do apologize. So here's our capital B, okay? And if you notice, the bumps are both on this side, just like the lowercase f. So that's kind of what's one way I teach them how to remember that. The other thing that I wanted to review, in case your kiddo needs it, is then writing the word of. So taking that O, the O and the F and putting it together. It's a little tricky. If you do, so when you do the word of, do your O however you do it, but make sure you don't go back down that line, otherwise it looks like an A. You need to Tarzan swing it, and you're going to go directly into that F, up to the ceiling, down to the basement, floor, and dotted midline, or the midline part. It's very important that they remember to Tarzan swing right up into that F. We want to make sure that we're not going down to the floor, because if you notice, it's messy and it looks like you're almost trying to make an A there. So very important that they do that. If you want your kiddo to practice it before they do the test, that's absolutely fine. Totally up to you. Just like the phonics and math tests that'll be going home when they get returned, I'm going to look at them, and if it looks like they totally bombed it, or if it looks like they've got less than an A, I'll circle the mistakes, and then I'll send it back for them to fix. With my penmanship, I'm pretty lenient on how I grade them. But I also know each kid pretty well. So the kid that I know that does super well, like almost perfect on this, I'm going to look really closely. Did they touch the halfway point for the end twice? Or did they accidentally do it 3 times? So I look a little deeper for the ones that do really well on penmanship. And my first graders who have just started learning cursive handwriting, or some of my second graders that still, struggle with cursive handwriting, I kind of am a little more lenient. Okay, they didn't do that R perfect, but they did remember to put a point at the top. So I look through them, and if there's something that needs to be fixed, I'll circle it with a pen. So that they can fix it, and then when they give it back to me, I like to check to make sure they fixed it the way they should, or if it's at least closer, and if not, if they're still off, that's when they lose a point each time. So I give them a little bit of leniency, and I'll do the same thing while we're in this quarantine business. So there's that. Thank you.